So, China, am I right? Like, what's the deal with China? Huh? Irrespective of that, we all know what's up with China. We know it is an authoritative country which has complete control over its citizens' lives as long as they, and it has a quite, you can say, a relaxed attitude towards its citizens' rights and their fundamental rights and stuff like that. And there is a sort of social contract between the people and the government, where the government is willing to provide you with services as long as you do not question it or try to change the status quo. And it kind of works out for most of the people, but living under a totalitarian regime is never a good thing. Far from it, actually. And before we get into this, let's uh, make a clear distinction between the Chinese Communist Party and the Chinese people. One can hate the Chinese Communist Party or the government of China, but at the same time, hating the Chinese populace would be quite irrelevant and disingenuous, because what the Communist Party does at a national or at an international level is not influenced by the opinions of the regular Chinese. It is completely motivated by what are the aspirations and what are the goals of the people at the top. So hating the Chinese populace would be quite wrong in this circumstance. Now, one could make an argument, well, the government is able to do such things because the population is in agreement with the government, but there isn't much of an agreement as much as a uh, forceful extraction of consent from the people, because when there is a threat of when there is a constant threat looming over your head about of being charged by sedition or crimes against the country and stuff like that. And besides, it's a, it's quite of a complex situation where on one hand you want freedom, but at the same time, if you were to speak about it, you would be prosecuted like there's no tomorrow by the all-seeing Communist Party. And that's just pretty fucking shitty, right? And the thing that bothers me more than that, or just as much as the Chinese Communist Party does, or CCP, and by the way, communism and totalitarianism are not always, or don't always come together. They can be practiced separately. There have been capitalist dictators, there have been capitalist totalitarian dictators, like take Taiwan, for example, or even South Korea, which was a totalitarian and a dictatorship before democracy came in. And the dictator himself was a capitalist himself. And the same thing was true for Taiwan before, or Chinese Taipei. Because if I say Taiwan, I'm definitely getting banned in China, and yes, if I say Chinese Taipei, then I'm getting fucked in Taiwan. But anyways, that's the thing though. Dictatorship, communism can happen separately. Capitalism and dictatorship can also happen together. It's just two ideologies which are not inherently linked together, but that's not the point right here. What the point I'm trying to make is the fact that even after the human right violations that the Chinese Communist Party does, the totalitarian stronghold it has over China, its increasingly more aggressive attitude towards its neighbors. It has a more aggressive stance in the global economy, where it is trying to exert its dominance over independent nations by putting them in debt traps, where it issues large loans to these small struggling countries for like 99 years, but these countries being so small and being so deprived of any sort of actual development take up these loans as a means of opportunity to develop their own local economies. But the terms and conditions of these loans are quite questionable, where one such being that the companies or the contractors that you hire must be based in China, so they have to import all this labor. So at the end, this money goes back to China anyways through Chinese companies, and so on and so forth. And at the end of the day, when this lease is up, when the time for repayment comes up, these cash-strapped nations do not have do not have the financial resources to pay back the loan that they took from China, and therefore they have to forfeit their assets to the Chinese Communist Party. You can see this in Sri Lanka, where they recently had to give up their ownership of a port for over 99 years to the Chinese, to China, and the same thing is happening in Pakistan, and it is very rampant in Africa and different parts of Africa. And we know all this time, or we know all these things. We know that the Chinese Communist Party or the Chinese government good um, is not a good well, I don't want to say person because it's not really a person, but it's not a good entity. It has quite questionable records, and it is a constantly it has proven itself to be self-centered and only working in its own only working for its own betterment, even if it comes at the expense of other countries. And even after knowing all of this, we still have companies, not just in the United States but throughout the world, which bend over backwards to please the Chinese government because of the massive, absolutely massive growing middle class that they have, and the purchasing power that these middle class families are capable of. And again, everything boils down to capitalism and its need for uncontrolled growth for fucking ever, which honestly, on a finite planet, having infinite growth is impossible. So now that these companies have completely saturated the American markets or the Western markets, they are not moving towards the east. Here, the one of the biggest markets being China, the second biggest being India, and the Asian continent itself is quite massive. And these companies, which are driven by only one thing, and that is profits and pleasing their investors. These are the only things that the capitalistic company cares about: growth, pleasing the investors, and making sure that they make a profit. These three things are the only thing that these companies care about. So these companies will bend over backwards to accommodate the wishes of the Chinese Communist Party, either be it Google, which makes us secondary sort of search engine exclusively for Chinese markets, allowing the government to have complete control on what is shown and what is not shown, and censoring such certain topics which might be critical towards the loving leader Xi Jinping. Fucking love him, bro. Reminds me of Winnie the Pooh, after all. Quite lovable in that sense. Anyways, that's what Google did. Then there was Apple, who created a separate app store for the Chinese market, so it is able to so the government has a much better control over the ads that might show up on the Play App Store, and be able to censor the apps which are, well, unpatriotic, or question the intellect of our lovely leader Xi Jinping, and basically have any sort of negative view towards the ruling party. And these are not the only companies that do such thing. Then this also goes to the mm, this is also applicable for the NBA. It is also applicable for numerous different companies which handle um, which are trying to make a profit over here, because once they have completely saturated the American markets, the Western markets, they are now moving to the east. And when you have a billion people, that means you have a billion consumers, you have a billion people who are willing to buy stuff. And again, with the rise of China and its growing middle class, there is a lot of cash to go around. And so these companies are coming in here and they're bending over backwards. They are willing to serve a dictatorial, totalitarian government as long as they're able to cushion their bottom lines, as long as they're able to extract that every single penny from the Chinese market to show off to the investors, to show off to the stock market, like, bro, we made a fucking $1 billion in a goddamn day. That looks absolutely fucking great on paper, but the means or the methods that they use to achieve that profit is quite questionable. And that really bothers me because, on one hand, these companies, when running ad campaigns in the Western world, they'll always be like, yeah, we support democracy, we support the workers, we are in favor of the common people, we are in favor of the working class, and we completely believe that people should have their fundamental rights. Nobody should live under a dictatorial dictatorship, and all of these ideas that they claim to hold dear to themselves are thrown out in the trash when they see a hint of profit coming from the totalitarian government. And that's just fucking such a weak as pussy as shit, right? And even John Cena, I'm not a big fan of John Cena specifically because of this thing. He has learned Chinese, and I'm not against that. People should and definitely explore different cultures. And like I said in the beginning, there's a difference between the Chinese government and the Chinese populace. I have no issues with John Cena learning Mandarin, having a deeper understanding of the Chinese culture and how the people live over there, what are their customs, what are their local traditions, and so on and so forth. But in a recent interview, if I'm not wrong, he accidentally called Taiwan a part of it, Taiwan a independent country instead of a part of China, which is a quite sensitive topic for the Chinese government. He later on went and apologized to the fucking Chinese people, like, ooh, I'm so fucking sorry that I called Taiwan an independent country instead of calling it a part of China. It's my fault. I'm extremely sorry for that. That was such a bullshit thing to do. Like, come on, dude. Pick a side. You can't call yourself an American who stands for freedom, who says that America is the home of the free, land of the brave, and then bend over backwards for a totalitarian government and be like, ooh, 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 I'm so fucking sorry. What's the point of being fucking 6 foot tall, jacked as shit, and being scared of fucking CCP? Which, let's be honest, can't really do much to you if you're sitting in a country like the United States. And the same thing goes for the fucking NBA when this, I don't know, I might be wrong about this, but some managing director or something of the Houston Rockets said he is in support of the Hong Kong protests or something of that sort. The NBA, the Chinese government straight up blacklisted the Houston team. I believe they are called Houston Rockets, and the fucking NBA forced that dude, and the NBA itself apologized to the fucking CCP because their bottom line was getting affected because the games were no longer airing in the Chinese market. And that is such a fucking weak, bitch ass, pussy ass shit that I have ever seen, bro. Like, come on. If you're gonna say something, at least fucking stick to it, right? Don't pretend. Like, if you're out here to make profit, be like that. I'm here to make profit. I don't give a shit if the people are getting oppressed so in that country. As long as I make my money, I do not care. If you're gonna say that, and if you say that and then do this stuff like this, I'm completely fine with that. At least I'll respect y'all for that. Like, y'all are sticking to what you say. But right now, it's always like, oh, we like democracy. We believe in fundamental rights. We believe everyone should get their constitutional rights. It's all fucking talk, bro. It's all fucking talk, and that gets on my nerves so fucking bad. Like, come on. If you say one thing, you do something else, and that's just fucking annoying, right? If you're gonna be a bloodthirsty, profit gouging monster, just say it out loud. That is who I am. That's the same thing even Disney does, right? Black Panther, they fucking covered up his face because China doesn't like black people apparently. Even the Star Wars posters, where the black dude was in the main frame of the posters, he was relegated to the fucking background in those Chinese posters. And honestly, the only reason I'm calling him a black dude because I don't know his name, alright? And that was the main reason for the controversy of him being moved back in the posters. And it's such a bullshit thing. Marvel does it, well, being a subsidiary of Disney, of course. Xbox and PlayStations when the Pride Month rolls around, and they show off that, of course, we support the LGBT community. We love those motherfuckers. Please buy our products. But when the same fucking month rolls around in China, they're like, what is the LGBT community? Yeah, we don't know what the fucking gays and the lesbians and the transsexuals do. I think they're just made up words. That's what their that is what their reaction is, and that's just so fucking annoying. And honestly, again, it all boils down to capitalism and making profits. And being a capitalistic organization, they are trying to make profits, and honestly, you can't even blame them for that because they are doing what they are supposed to do. They are appealing to a broadest market to make the largest amount of profit and to have a more accountable financial sector. That would imply we have a socialized or a communist government which does not believe in constant and infinite growth but rather sustained growth along with the elevation of people to a higher standard of living without the use of exploitation of cheap labor, and not being completely profit driven, rather being more community oriented and more humanity driven. So that's, honestly, if you think about it, most of our problems in our world have arose through capitalism and its disgusting fucking tendrils that always seek out profit. So yeah, I'll put up a QR code over one of these corners where you all can send me Bitcoin because I need fucking money, right? You feel me? Even though I might be a socialist, I wouldn't say I'm a socialist all the way because I don't feel like I'm quite well read about this topic. But irrespective of that, I live in a capitalistic society. I live under capitalism, and I willingly or unwillingly have to take part in it. And taking part in a capitalistic society requires capital. I do not have free education, nor do I have free healthcare. So things like that require money. So feel free to send Bitcoin or any other sort of cryptocurrency and I will try to make those wallets available in these corners or in the description below. And as always, if you liked the video, like listening to me rant about certain topics, more specifically about capitalism, feel free to like the video and share it with others.